Tonight, a bombshell report by the Associated Press is firing up conservatives all around the country. Now, alarming details regarding Friday's so-called budget deal are finally beginning to emerge, and those details appear to indicate that, well, frankly, we were all sold a bill of goods by President Barack Obama. Now, in the end, $38 billion in spending cuts were agreed to by Republicans and Democrats. But to pad that total, the AP has revealed that lawmakers used a number of questionable accounting tricks. Now, one such maneuver includes $10 billion in so-called cuts to earmarks. But in reality, House Republicans already instituted a ban on earmarks earlier this year. In addition, a large portion of the spending cuts are actually from unused government funds that have just been sitting around. Now, that includes unspent census money, leftover health care funds, and from money from construction projects that were never used. And as the truth about this bogus budget deal emerges, another major proposal on addressing the nation's deficit will be unveiled by President Barack Obama tomorrow. Well, let's just say I'll be standing by, waiting for a speech with a very skeptical eye. And here with more on these developing stories, the host of Varney and Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney, former White House press secretary, herself a Fox News contributor, Dana Perino. By the way, elections shouldn't matter that much.
Why is that?
Because Nancy Pelosi said so. Oh. All right. Let me just lay this out. Republicans promised $100 billion in cuts. They prorated it to 61. They told us it was 38. By my count, maybe we're down to 26. I can tell you that the feedback I am getting from conservatives and how I feel like they should have stood firm and they should have been willing to shut the government down.
I know there's a lot of people that feel that way. I also think that...
You're not one of them.
No, I'm not. I'm not one of them, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of emails now.
No,
but
I want your true opinion. That's why you're
here's
here.
the thing. President Obama started 2011 saying that there would be a spending freeze. He wasn't going to do any cuts at all. And I recognize that people are disappointed in what they got, but they did get 80% of what they were going to get. And some of those unspent funds, President Obama wanted that money around so that he could use them for other things later on. He was holding that in reserve, and now he doesn't have that opportunity. What really matters is what they did last week, which is the House Republican budget that was introduced by Paul Ryan. That's where the real meat is to try to cut the budget.
Stuart, my point is, you know, $61 billion was a pebble in the ocean. And I just feel that $14 trillion headed to $24 trillion in debt is too serious not to be willing to say, we're going to take a stand.
Look, we've got a debt crisis. It's clear. Today we learned that in March alone, the deficit was $188 billion in 1 month. We've got a debt crisis. It's not being dealt with. And what I find is a rising sense of anger and frustration by both conservatives and independents and even some Democrats, because we're not dealing with what is a crisis. You cannot discover government money lying around unspent, say you're not going to spend it, and then call that a cut. That's a form of intellectual fraud. And when you look at the actual cuts, what was really cut here, it is so minuscule compared to the $1.6 trillion deficit for this year as to amount to almost
fraud. Why are we beating everybody up for something that amounts to a pebble?
Because we're in a crisis.
On what matters.
Because we are in a crisis, and this matters.
We can't both say that it doesn't matter, that it's a piddling amount, and then say that we should have done more about it.
Can I tell you why it matters?
It does matter.
It matters because we've got the debt ceiling. And then after the debt ceiling, we got the 2012 budget. And if we take off the table the idea that we're going to shut down the government, if they don't show that they mean business on $61 billion, how are they ever going to fight for $6.2 trillion?
Well, maybe the pressure that conservatives bring to bear on them will have an impact on that. I think what's interesting, too, is that we're focusing on ourselves and this infighting within conservatives without focusing on the real story, which is that President Obama, for example, on the debt limit thing, the flip-flop that he's about to do is embarrassing.
I've talked about it. It is embarrassing.
It's a pox on both their houses.
Yes.
But if they do this again, if there's more smoke and mirrors in the next it's World War III that's coming right at us. It's coming right at us. We've got to do something about this debt. We've got 4 weeks to do it.
Right.
If we mess around with piddling amounts and fake cuts, if we do that again, the markets will create a debt crisis and we'll all pay a very large price.
Let's look at it from another perspective, which is that they started off the year saying that any sort of spending cuts would be horrible for the economy. Now he's trying to take credits for what he's calling the largest spending cut since World War II.
Sure, a pox on both their houses, but let's not ignore the seriousness of the situation.
You've changed the conversation and the debate. So now let's figure out
wait a minute, but
how
that's
we
not
do
what they didn't promise to change the conversation. They didn't promise to change the debate. They promised that they would go there, stand firm, and cut $100 billion.
And what we have to do is have Republicans win the Senate in 2012, as well as take over the presidency.
No spending can happen without the approval of the House. This is the point. What, you're giving me that look?
Well, are you asking Tea Party people to vote against this when the vote comes to the House?
Now, Dana does have a good point. Because we're now going to have the debt ceiling remark. This is President Obama from 2006. He said, Mr. President, this is Obama, a senator, I rise today to talk about America's debt problem. The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It's a sign the U.S. government can't pay its own bills. It's a sign that we now depend on ongoing financial assistance from foreign countries to finance our government's reckless fiscal policies. Leadership means the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt and failure of leadership. America deserves better. He wouldn't support the debt lit. He was right. Every liberal out there, Obama was right.
Right.
Then.
And now he's having to change his position. And it's like there's more twists and turns than like that. What's that thing, the Aunt Annie's pretzel shop at the airport that I see a lot. But he's like Houdini, right? He tries to get away with it. The press just is like, oh, right, now he's just going to change his position. But for conservatives, when President Obama basically is admitting that he chose political expediency over his principles, now why shouldn't Republicans do the same to him?
Stuart?
Look, I hate to repeat myself. We've got a debt crisis. It's a real big one, and we've got a very limited window of opportunity to deal with it. If we carry on like we carried on with this government shutdown, we conservatives, we will lose.
Would we have been better off if we shut the government? Would the Republicans have been better off if they shut it down? Because my argument is the reason why Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, Mike Pence, all these governors, Kasich to Walker to Christie to Jindal to Haley, the reason they're popular is they're taking a stand and they're fighting.
We will be better off if this vote, when it's taken in the House, goes down to defeat. That would send a real message that we, all of us, independents, some Democrats and conservatives, are all very serious about this because we're in a mess. Sorry?
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. I just think that if we are focusing on the pebble, we're not missing the boulder.